For your lab exam next week. So please make sure you remember to review the hearts and all that other stuff, otherwise we're going to kill you next week. Let's go through the lymphatic system. So my favorite website does not actually have any lymph stuff on it. So I'm going to show you one that has lymph stuff on it, but it's not labeled. Right? So if you scroll down my page, there I am, Find Rose Shoots page, which is right there. Click that and go to AQ2 models. And go down where it says lymphatic and go lymphatic system. There's Board Boy. Right, so you can use that as a place that can point, but again, it's not labeled per se. Oh, does that have numbers? No, it doesn't have numbers either. All right. So let's go through the lymphatic stuff. So you have the vessels, the trunks, and the ducts. The vessels are the teeny tiny ones like this. What are these yellow blobos like that? Nose. The nose and filters, right? And then in the Dark Ages, I learned that as you travel closer to the body core, you're then going to go up to a trunk. A trunk like a tree is just a bigger tube. So for example, this one up the middle of your back there. That looks like a tree trunk. It also doesn't have any nodes on it. So that tells me it's draining nodes, and you're going to go up this way. So I would call that a trunk. And then if you notice, it curves and then ducts into my vein. That would be the duct there where it turns and enters my venous system. So in the Dark Ages, I learned vessels are small, trunks were next, ducts were the last two spots. That's what I learned.
So that once they hit the vessel, then they're actually attached.
Right. So this fluid's going into this fluid.
But even though it's showing it on the surface of
it actually would be a hole.
It's really up in
Yep. Okay on that idea? So then all you have to do then is remember your blood vessels and take a shot at naming them the same. So for example, here is a white tube that runs along this big blue tube, and that's in my neck. What would you call the blue tube?
Jugular.
What do you call the white tube?
Jugular.
That's right. So that would be my right jugular trunk, because it's a tube going up my neck or down my neck. All right? So let's see. Here's a white tube that's sort of running along this blue thing. What would you call that one, or maybe this one here? Subclavians, because they're on my subclavian vein. So if in doubt, just name the blood vessel and put the word trunk after it. You're probably okay.
What about that one that's crossing over?
Here?
Yes.
That is not what you have to do.
Is it a trunk though?
This would be a trunk, yes.
Okay.
What's a vessel then?
A vessel, I learned, was something that's like between the nodes, like here.
Oh.
That's what I learned.
And then the farthest extension
It'd just be more vessel.
is more capital.
So here's a trunk, quote, quote, right here. It dips down about this point and goes down where your heart would be. What do you call that area where your heart used to live? Mediastinum, so the bronchomediastinal would be the ones that come down, service your heart, and go into your bronchi, which are these, so bronchomediastinal. Okay, that's the only one that's not really a blood vessel, per se. Let's go down further on this guy. Girl, whatever it is. It, they. All right. So, gee whiz, there's a bunch of white tubing in intestine land. These are your intestines. What would you call those big tubes in intestines? Intestinal, right? That's what they say. Then we have a problem on the model that I personally have a hang-up with.
Is that intestinal trunk?
Yes.
Okay.
So, let me go back. So, formally, the intestinal, you can't see it in this model when you take the picture, but there's a break there, and the intestinal trunk comes out. That little button right there is a key landmark that always appears on every key, every quiz, every lecture, lab quiz. What is that little bump right there? Cisterna chili, the chili pot, literally, what it's saying. Not chili. Okay, so from that, you're going to branch down into the intestinal. There's also going to be one that goes this way and one that goes this way, toward here. What are here in English? Let's do a little higher up. Lumbar. So you have a right and left lumbar and intestinal all come out of that pot. On your model, you can take this off. On this one, you didn't. All right? But my beef with this whole thing is the way the models are shown. I learned the right and lefts go like this. The intestinal comes out and loops over. The model tends to show it turned. So it looks like they're in the wrong place. But what you want to do is take your finger and just go backwards from the organ and see where you end up. And I'll tell you if you're in the lumbar or the intestinal. Make sense? Use your finger and trace. But those are your trunks. We have some clavians, jugulars, intestinals, lumbars, bronchomediastinal, cisternoculi. Then we have to name the things at the top.
Cisternoculi is intestinal, right and left lumbar.
That's it.
That's it.
That kind of. So here's the problem. You have to make sure you know right and left on this model as well, because there's a difference in the ducts. If you notice this tube here, it only goes over to here. So what do you call this trunk and that duct?
Left.
No.
Which one?
The thoracic duct, because it goes through my chest and drains here. There's also a drain right there, which is not on the left side, it's on the right side. What do you call that one? Right lymphatic duct. So here's where you have to be careful on a quiz and exam, because we always ask this question. We always add, like we point here and hope you'll think that's the same word as here, and vice versa. So thoracic duct goes up the left side, lymphatic duct is on the right side. They're not the same word, even the same thing.
I'm having a problem seeing the difference between the thoracic and the mediastinal.
Well, the thoracic's the big tube underneath, which goes here. The mediastinal goes on top of it and branches
Oh, okay.
here. So they're layered.
Okay.
So what's the difference between the trunk and the duct?
The duct informally is where the trunk ends.
Oh,
Right there and right there.
where it ends. Okay.
That's where the drain is. So be careful. If you look in your lab now, they show a green part that's drained by the right side, and there's a different part of your body drained by the left. Make sure you know the right and left. But they're not called right and left. They're called right, lymphatic, and thoracic. Make sense?
So can you point the lymphatic again? Up.
Well, right lymphatic is here. Thoracic is there. So far, so good?
And the median, the bronchomediastinum is the
The one's on
that-
top here.
So
Over
that
the
whole kind of web.
Yeah, this whole webby that would come up behind this and pop out of there.
Where are they coming from, or where?
They're basically coming out of the jugulars,
Out of the
or going into the jugulars. Is it okay on opposing board, boys?
So far.
Alright, so then we'll look at the yellow dots again. What are the yellow dots?
No.
Okay, so what do you call the nodes in your armpit? Tell me.
Axillary.
Where would I go to find cervical?
Neck.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a general rule. Let's find those. There you are. And where do I find, let's see, inguinal, groiny land, and then intestinal.
Urine
So here, she cut off, I think, his legs. Yeah, she got off his legs, but they'd be in the groin and the intestinal. So if I just pointed to yellow things in general and said, you know, name these, you just say, well, those are your intestinal nodes, and walk out. Right? That's all I do with them.
I know, that's all you're doing.
75 impressions of that. All right, now let's do the real thing. Let's do microscopic structures. J-Doc is your friend. Let's go back to J-Doc. We're going to start with this. So you want to name the organ you see and then break it down. So someone tell me this organ.
Looks like a kidney. I have no idea. A spleen.
Say lymph node. How would I know that's a lymph node, you ask? Okay. There's several clues. They're not always the best clues. Okay. So what you want to do is look for the layering of the organ. You notice that there's a clear little layer here. Then there's like a dark ring like here. And there's kind of an open center, right? Lymph nodes tend to be like that, where there's a ring of dark around a center like that. So they're basically one layer organ. That would be your lymph node. Let me show you a different picture to illustrate this concept more. This is a close-up of a lymph node. Notice the layering. We have a clear outside, we have a dark here, and a less dark there. Make sense? Okay, so let's start naming these parts. What do you call the outside part that's clear?
Capsule?
That's the capsule. Right? Where else did you have a capsule? Adrenal gland? Does that ring a bell? This looks just like an adrenal gland. It's the same logic. So what would you call the outer layer of an adrenal gland?
Cortex.
So what do you call the outer layer of a lymph node?
Cortex.
How about that? What do you call the inner layer of an adrenal gland? What do you call it here?
Medulla.
That's the same logic. So it looks like an adrenal gland. Same 3 layers. The trick is, these dark layers now have things in them. So let me show you a... Unfortunately, it doesn't show good on my screen. You can actually see it better in this picture.
The cortex is outside of the capsule?
No, it's inside. It's within. So you have to look carefully right here. On my little screen, you can see it better, honestly. But what do you see there? You see circles, right? Little rings. What did you call rings in the thyroid gland? What do you call them here? Follicles. So the follicles are in sort of the cortex, or along the outside ring of this organ. So those would be the follicles of the dark, ringy looking things, right? What do you call the center of the rings? Germinal center. Those are lighter in color normally. So here I have a ring follicle with a germinal center in the center, in the cortex. Make sense?
No.
Okay, so if we zoom in on it, and unfortunately, it's a lot easier to see on my screen than on that screen. So you may want to take a look here. But look right here and here. What do you see there and there? Follicle. What do you see there? Very good. So that tells you it's a lymph node, because the follicles are in the ring on the outside. Make sense? Okay, some other words. There's a gap between the capsule and the cortex right here. Subscapular sinus. We put soup. It should be sub. Subscapular sinus.
Isn't it subcapsular?
Subcapsular, yes. Did I say subscapular?
Yes.
That's somewhere else.
Subcapsular.
Subcapsular sinus. I can't say it. All right, below your capsule space. Who lives there, according to this? The T cells live there. So now what you're going to do is, from the subcapsular sinus, take your finger and go down these white things like here, 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 like spokes. Trabeculae. Trabeculae are the spokes, quote, that come down from the subcapsular sinus. Those are trabeculae. So the trabeculae penetrate into the cortex to the medulla. Make sense? That's everything on the lymph node. So you're looking for a ring of those dark circles, and that's basically your node. Every other lymphoid organ we do will have the same general parts. What differs is where they're located in the organ. So you want to get that follicle germinal center thing in your head, because every other one has it. Okay? Good.
Does Sylvania do this immune system? Because I don't have it in my lab manual.
They're supposed to. We're all supposed to do the same labs. PCC. Well, Sylvania wants to do their own thing.
Okay.
I have no idea.
Maybe you're just gonna
So
get
the
printed or
spokes are going from
something?
the sinus?
So what?
Medulla?
Sorry.
The spokes?
They
From the
go into the
sinus?
medulla.
Do you mind?
So the trabeculae run all the way into the medulla.
Right, they would go, you can see it here, right? There's one that goes in, here's one, here's one. They should, in theory, go into the medulla.
Can you show the follicle and the germinal center so much? So just the circle.
Those are. Yeah, but wait, we're not done yet.
And where's the germinal?
Because it's a semicircle.
Oh, okay, so it's a circle within a circle.
What do you call this big lump right there? Medullary what?
Course.
Is it a sinus?
Sinus.
Sinus, medullary sinus. That's the big, on a lot of your slides you won't see that because they won't have this depression. But you're going to have a hole in this medulla, medullary sinus. Now, we have, on this slide, you have this little kind of kidney bean looking thing, which you're actually going to hear a lot next term all the time. Anyone know what you call a kidney bean looking thing officially? Hilum or hilus. So this is the hilum or hilus where the plumbing enters, medullary sinus, medulla, trabeculae, and all that.
Can you point out the whole thing?
It's just this, the notch right here.
Oh.
The kidney bean shape of a kidney is,
Isn't that the same as the kidneys?
yes. everything, hilum just means to notch in, so everything has hilum. Your lungs have a hilum, your kidney, it's just one more word. Right? So the only thing on here that you cannot see on a slide is afferent versus efferent. But you should know what they mean. What does afferent mean?
Going in.
Going into what in this case?
Lymph.
Into the lymph system, and then efferent would be coming out. So your lab manual has a diagram that shows it, but I don't tend to ask that on a slide because it's almost impossible to find it. Plus I think it's unfair, but that's me.
Is that just an artery up there
Yeah.
with the lumen?
This one's an artery, that's probably a big vein. Yeah.
So how does it travel, like, going in? Does it go, like, into the,
Yeah, so it should then basically come through like this. It goes around the outside, drains in, and then drains back out. Just like an oil filter would. So you pass through all the sinuses and all that. Yes?
That kind of brought up a question for me, is how is the lymphatic system, like, there's nothing that pumps or
Right.
anything, right? Is it all just
the
gravity
muscles
or?
melt it?
Gravity, and also because there's valves, every time you move, you squeeze lymph as well.
Okay.
That's why massage is really good.
Right. Massage, socks, gravity, walking. It's exactly the same as the vein system.
Because the muscles push it too,
Yeah,
just, right,
muscles,
okay.
same thing.
What were the what were the chords?
Chords, okay, chords are this odd construction. Now, depending on who you talk to, you'll get a different definition. I learned that this whole section between the trabeculae was a chord, like a room. Now, if you talk to other people, they'll argue, no, it's the vessels within the area. Okay. So I would say that that's a chord, this is a chord, here's a chord. And by the way, I never asked chords on any exam.
So is the capsule the room then?
Yeah. Okay, lymph node. Look for rings of follicles, because the next one I show you will be different. Let me show you something different. Which one should I know which one. Okay, is this a lymph node? Say no.
No.
How do I know it's not a lymph node?
The layers.
It's not on a layer, right? Notice the circles are all over the map. They're mix and match. They're not in a ring. So this is our next organ down, Mr. Spleen. You're looking at close to a spleen, but do you see follicles? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, but in a spleen they name them differently. The dark things are called white pulp. I didn't come up with this. Okay. White blood cells are purple, white pulp is black. So what do you call the stuff that's not dark? Like the red stuff? Red pulp. So, but you still see that germinal center concept, it's just they're spread out and
I'm not
mixed
seeing
around.
anything
Yeah,
dark.
we have that.
The purple's the white,
Purple's the white,
Oh, okay.
the red's the red.
the red's the red, the purple's the white.
Wow.
This makes sense in biology way.
Okay, so the red is everything else?
The red is non-circle, yes,
Non-circle.
basically.
And the dark spots are white pulp?
White pulp, yep. So if that were a node, you say follicle, but in a spleen, you say white
So
pulp.
which one are the dark spots then?
The dark spots are white.
The purple.
Just think the opposite, then you have biology.
Think of a white blood cell, right? They're purple. When you see that, that's the same logic
Oh,
here.
right.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, I'm just...
But they're both follicles.
So if you look at how they...
So
White pulp is WP, the dark things are white, the non-white pulp... No, you're not colorblind. It's all just called a blue tissue white.
But that's all how it gets stained.
That's how it gets stained, but we name things by how it looks, not what it is. So it gets stained dark, you know, whatever. That's how it is.
So those are all follicles.
Yeah, so you don't call them follicles in the spleen.
We're calling them
White red.
White pulp, red pulp. Another view. You can still make out that there's dark circles and non-dark circles, but because they're scattered, I know that's a spleen, and that therefore is white, and this is red, because it's a spleen. Yeah, I can hear the love here. Okay. Now, JDoc unfortunately doesn't show a bigger picture of a spleen, so I'm actually going to shift gears for a second here. I'm going to take you to Boston's website, because they actually will have the whole spleen in a view, unless their website's not working again, probably to me.
Mr. Christie,
Yes.
in general with the staining, is it gonna be that purple for the white pulp?
It should. It should be
Purple or
dark.
blue?
Yeah.
It'll just be darker. I mean, you won't see it. Okay. Here is a spleen. And the reason I know it's a spleen on a lymph node is look at the circle, the dark areas. Notice that they're everywhere and not in just the outside. So you got to be careful where the circles are. Right? That is a spleen versus a node. We should even have a node in this one. Yes. Here's the node. Notice on the node the dark is only in the outside. So you're going to catch on that layering thing. Same parts, same colors, just different spot in the slide. So you have to get really good on your slides. Make sure you look at the whole picture first before you zoom in. Otherwise it'll just look like red and dark. Right? That's node. It's like the spleen land. Right? Or spleen. Here's a very beautiful spleen. Notice the red and the white. All right? But notice also that the circles are interspaced everywhere. There's no inside-outside medulla. So, beautiful, beautiful spleen. Beautiful spleen. Right? But let's go back to the other Boston picture for a second. If I saw this view, you would notice that there is a little thing right out here that surrounds the whole spleen. What would you call that if that were a lymph node?
A capsule.
The capsule. What do you call it here? Say capsule.
Capsule.
Capsule. And then you can vaguely see that there are some little white lines that come from the outside toward the middle. What would you call those? Trabeculae. So you're going to use the same language, just remembering white versus red versus, right? So it's the same answers over and over and over. Right? But let's keep going. So that's a spleen, interspersed circles. Now, let's make it a little different. Write the J dot here for a second. I'm going to show you which one I picked now. What say ye? Is this a lymph node?
No.
Is this a spleen?
No.
No. What's different about this?
It's big old white
Those
things.
big old white things. Good answer. So, this looks like everything else, but I don't remember these big lines, or septa, meaning wall. Therefore, this is a thymus. You take a lymph node and put walls in it. And now you are a thymus. Right? So septum makes walls. So this is a thymus. What do you call the room there between the white lines? That's a lobule. So this is a lobule, aka room. These are the walls, aka septa. And if you look carefully, you'll notice that there's a dark outside and a lighter inside. What would you call the outside of the room?
Cortex.
Cortex. What would you call the inside of the room? How about that? It's a lymph node with walls. That's the same language. But you notice the walls make it distinctly a thymus. Right? I'll show you I'm not making this up. But let me show you this view. Is this the thymus?
Yes.
It is. That's the septa, the white lines you see. We break into rooms, lobules, give an outside-inside cortex medulla. So it looks like a lymph node and spleen, but it has lines which make it very different. Let me show you. Is that a thymus? Say yes.
Yes.
How do I know it's a thymus?
Big old white.
White lines here, some big white, and you can see that there's like
Can you see
rooms,
cortex and
lobule,
medulla?
lobule.
Yeah.
You can see that it's like lymph node with multiple parts attached.
Would you point to the medulla and the cortex in this picture?
So just from the coloration here,
Yeah.
cortex would be
is
this
the-
dark
Oh,
here,
okay, that's better.
medulla would be this here. Cortex, medulla. Cortex, medulla, lobule 1, cortex, medulla, lobule 2. So you have multiple cortex medullae.
So every time there's a medulla, then, and the cortex around, that's one lob.
Yep.
Per se. Does that one that's in the middle, kind of towards the bottom, the one right in the middle, it's not actually separated? That one, yeah. So is that considered two lobules?
Yeah, I would consider it 2. I bet you it does separate, but it's not in the right here. But if it did separate, then it'd be 2 lobules. I think it actually would be separated from the view. Do okay on thymus. Look for walls.
Jonathan?
Yes?
For the spleen, can we not see the splenic cords, venous sinuses, and central?
Not really well, no. Not on the images I have. So let's do our next one. I wonder what it will be. I know what it will be. Oh, maybe it won't be there. Okay, I'm gonna use the Boston picture for this one. What is that, say ye? That's a tonsil. Okay, let's look at how it looks. It looks exactly the same as everything else, right? Big circles. And you notice what's different is you have this big notch or lip into it. Looks like Pac-Man. Right? That's your clue that this is not a spleen or a lymph node or a thymus, that's a tonsil. Tonsils have a crypt, which is this empty space that goes kind of down the middle. So it looks like a folded taco Pac-Man-y thing. Okay, so that's the crypt. Is the white space. What do you call, though, the circles of dark? Follicles. What do you call the center of the circles?
Germinal center.
Germinal centers. Just use a lymph node, but call it a tonsil. They're the same.
Is the crypt a like a reservoir or
Yeah,
something?
just basically that space.
Bacteria.
Yeah. You okay on those? So you're looking for the same structures, just in different patterns. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you to a website I'm not going to show you. Evil man. And then I'm going to randomly throw one at you. Okay. Name the organ.
No,
Lymph node.
no.
I have votes for nodes.
Lymph node.
It's a good one.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
Dark
75 points on it.
Dark
Yeah.
only
You
on the
bet you
outside.
will. Very good. How'd you know it's a lymph node?
Because
Circles on the edge. You know, yeah, well, there's one that isn't. Well, okay, grow up. That's
follicles on
fine.
the
All
outside
right.
of the cortex.
They're mostly in the cortex. You see a capsule. You see a medulla. It's kind of a ring. You see a hilum. That's a very classic lymph node. Again, ring of dark. You can especially see it on my little screen. The color's better. Right? Let's try another one. You'll miss this one.
No.
Lymph node.
It's a lymph node.
It is. Same thing. I'm trying to scare you, right?
The medulla.
That's even better than the other. All right, let's try.
Okay.
Saw it.
It's
Ah!
Tonsil.
That's that crypt right in the
Some of
middle.
you weren't cheaters. How would you know?
The crypt.
Here's our crypt.
the crypt.
It's Pac-Man.
So
Tails.
Pac-Man taco thing is a little lip usually on them. Crypt, but again I have a ring of a lymph node with a hole in the middle. Alright? You gotta learn how to turn that.
That's exactly what it said to me too.
Yeah, now I can push something. Alright. There'll be no screen to help you next week, so just remember, just cut yourself. Let's do,
Yep.
It's starting to be fun, Mr. Christie. What's happening?
let's do this one.
He did say lip. Yep.
Can I say this?
That's one of the descriptors.
Let's try. Which one do I like?
That's all I'm saying.
Take your time, Jonathan. I'm just going to scan the room for all the characters.
This audience snoring during the orange steroid. Okay.
Septa.
Thymus.
Thymus.
Are you sure it's thymus?
Yes.
Yeah,
Be
because they
sure
have
to
that
find
big
it.
wide wall.
How did you know?
The septa.
Septa.
They're the rooms. So we have a cortex medulla in each, quote, room or lobule. Right? It looks kind of like a spleen, but a spleen doesn't have those. Alright. Let's see which one I should get you with. This one is not the best pictured town, so let me get you.
Is it a spleen?
Is it? I don't know. You
I
tell me.
see a capsule.
Well, there's a capsule, yeah.
I'm going to say it's a
I think it was
spleen.
I agree, yeah.
The problem is the coloration's wrong, right? I mean, but here are what's left of your germinal centers. But notice how I have circles everywhere. Not in a ring, not on the outside, there's no lip.
Yeah.
This is a weird looking spleen with a lousy coloration job. Right? You can tell it's red pulp, right? Try another one here. This would be a close-up of that if they stained it differently.
Spleen.
That's spleen, so what kind of pulp is this?
White.
White.
White. What kind of pulp is too close? I can't even see. Like right here, yeah. Right. But they're scattered.
Where's the
You know what I
silver?
mean?
So there is only red and purple, right? There's only
Red and
red,
white.
purple, and white.
No, red and white. That's the only two choices. in this
Only
plate.
red and white.
The white is the purple. Let's try this one here. This one here.
That's a spleen.
Same thing. Spleen, different angle. So if you can look for the circles and how they're arranged, you get to the histology of the lymphatic system. Make sense? Okay, so the rest of your time, remember you have a lab exam next week on everything. I do it on the tonsil? I'll do a tonsil. That's right, because you cheated, sorry. Yes.
Well, now we know you're gonna pick that, so.
When do you think this will be up? When do you think this will be up?
You can
When do
see
you think
the.
we're gonna have this up?
That's hard.
Saturday?
I'll try to do it tomorrow or Sunday for sure.
Hopefully it could be a subject.
That's a Thompson. It almost looks like a spring. Bridget. That's a Thompson.
That's a tonsil.
What? Yeah.
Oh, you're the problem. I never get you on the exam.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to just start big. So we'll do our nodes first. So these would be inguinal nodes, axillary nodes, cervical nodes, and then intestinal nodes. So then the nodes are going to drain by vessels, the little white spider-like lines, and those are going to collect into trunks. So the trunks then usually get named by where they are. So on this model, this thing here I'm calling the intestinal trunk because it's draining my intestines. And there should be two, one for the right lumbar, which I'm going to argue is this one. There should be another one for the left side, which I think on this model they've hidden. That's why I get in a fight with this model, is there should be one more tube. But I do know the pot here is the sternocili. That one I know. That's going to go up your back, so the thoracic duct they call it. A thoracic trunk, sorry. And then drain into here, which is the thoracic duct. So all this is going to drain here. Then you have these ones on this side. So you have a jugular coming down here with a subclavian, which is going to be basically right here. These are going to drain into the right lymphatic duct, which is here.
Is the duct where it actually goes
Yeah, that's that
into
little-
the vein?
It is. That's
Okay.
the little tube. That's
A little
how I learned
connection
it.
there.
So the ducts are where you duct.
Mm-hmm.
And then the only thing left is bronchomediastinal, which is the plumbing you see on the lungs and where the heart would be, which would be here. And that's going to drain up, and those should drain over to here. It just doesn't show very clear. So you have your subclavians, your jugular, your thoracic, your intestinal, and lumbar trunks, which are draining into the thoracic duct and the right lymphatic duct. And that's pretty much all you can see on him. Yeah. Make sense?
So then it's all cleared by the time it goes through the heart.
Should be, you hope.
As
That's
much
the
as
goal.
possible.
That is the goal.
And then about, is that the, what are all these, just the femoral and?
Yeah, those would be some weird inguinal that kept going or something. Because you do have some scattered willy-nilly. Here's some in your armpit, your elbow. There's a few here. But generally, I think those are just extensions of the inguinal. I never heard the any of your femoral.
So are these the inguinal?
Yep.
Okay.
Are they pushing, say, cough? Yep.